Since Elder Scrolls 6 may actually release one day, in today's video I thought it'd be fun to go through the features I really want to be in the game, talk about what I want them to bring back, and new things I want them to introduce. Let's start big with a massive obvious one, Bethesda's biggest crutch for the last couple decades. It needs to be moddable and easily moddable. Starfield, there's a decent chance it will be saved and mainly playable due to mods. A lot of people play that game with mods. Same with Skyrim, same with Fallout 4. These games thrive off the modding communities that make extra content once Bethesda has moved on. To be fair to Bethesda, they do a pretty decent job of letting modders do pretty much whatever they want, and I definitely want to see this pulled forward with Elder Scrolls 6. This just gives the game the best chance to thrive among the community and be widely popular with people who also like to create their own things for games. I think if it doesn't have it, a lot of people will just go back to Skyrim. Although very unlikely, I'd like to see some improved combat. Now, I'm not saying anything drastic, but when you look at Skyrim, it plays basically the same in the melee department as Starfield. There's a few different things, don't get me wrong, but it, for the most part, feels the same. You hack and slash and you watch the little health bar go down. I don't hate it. It's not that I'm sitting here going like, if this doesn't happen, Elder Scrolls 6 is dead on arrival. But it would definitely be interesting to see them improve on this and make the combat feel a bit more fun, a bit more fleshed out, and a bit more enjoyable to attack enemies. I'm not asking for any sort of major leaps here. I'm talking maybe a leap about the size of Oblivion's combat to Skyrim's combat. You know, they both vaguely resemble each other, but Skyrim just feels a bit less clunky, a bit more improved, and feels quite nice. Here may actually be the biggest one for me, and I mean it, this game will be dead on arrival if it has not got this. I need a good soundtrack in Elder Scrolls 6. Now, I like Starfield. I've made it very clear I really do enjoy the game, but I've got to say, I didn't really feel much about Starfield's soundtrack. I honestly don't feel any certain type of way about it. It's not horrible. I just don't think it has the same charm or the same level of atmosphere that something like Skyrim's soundtrack had, or Oblivion's soundtrack had, or maybe even Fallout's. It's not that Starfield is bad, it's just not as good, which I think you could probably put towards most of the game, but that's my issue. I really do think that the soundtrack doesn't really pull through in Starfield the way that Skyrim's does, Oblivion's does, Fallout's does, etc. So I definitely like to see a return to a quality good soundtrack. Again, it's not that it's bad, but I definitely want to see it improved. I would love to see some more really unique enemy types. Now, I heard a little leak a while back from an ex-Bethesda employee. I'm vaguely remembering this, so I may be off here. Something along the lines that Todd usually goes for like the most basic-ass enemies. He doesn't like to adventure with the more crazy ones that people come up with. So that doesn't really bode well for what I'm saying here, but I definitely just want to see some interesting designs, some really cool ones, something a little on the wilder side, something we would not think of seeing in Skyrim. I know that when I saw Dragon Priests, I was like, damn, that is creepy, and that is so set to Skyrim. That's the most Skyrim-ass enemy I've ever seen. And then you play a game like Fallout and you see Deathclaws and you're like, yeah, that's Fallout's enemy. That is the enemy that you can only see in Fallout. And I want Elder Scrolls 6 to have an enemy like that. Maybe even 2 or 3. Some really crazy enemies that are tied to the game. Going back to Skyrim, perhaps the more appropriate pick would have been dragons, but I don't know, Dragon Priests, man, they just scare the hell out of me. I don't want it to be randomly generated like Starfield. I don't think it will, just to throw it out there. Starfield's a very complicated game and I can see why they made some decisions the way they did, but I don't think it worked. I will never attack Bethesda for trying new things, even if they don't work. If they're being lazy, different story. But with Elder Scrolls 6, I think it's safe to say that it definitely won't work in an Elder Scrolls thing, and it barely worked in a space game. So, I think, personally, they should stick to what they know. Make a handcrafted world, make it nice and big, plenty of things to look around and explore and find, and you know, just do what you know. You don't need to completely fix and overhaul this. This is a good formula. They've kind of got it made for them here. They've done it so many countless times before, and it's worked pretty much every time. Bethesda are at their peak when they're handcrafting levels and adding their own little details, their own little bits of lore, their own weird hidden quests. That is peak Bethesda, so why move away from that? I would love to see the follow-up to some mysteries showcased in the prior Elder Scrolls games. They usually always do this, and this has always been a bit of a pet peeve of mine with Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and even Starfield now I think about it. They set the games after a major event, not during. Now, one could argue it's because it's better to leave things to the imagination, and I get that. Todd went on about Akavir, I think it was, which was that really weird land that we haven't yet to explore. He was like, you know, we could go there, we could explore it in a game, but then the mystery's gone, and I get that, okay? But when you're recounting lore, I feel like we always come in after the cool stuff's done. I mean, look at the Great War. We were not a part of that. We did not play at any point any major parts in the Great War. To my knowledge, maybe I've missed a quest somewhere, but I'm just saying, I don't think we had any major, like, parts in the Great War. And, you know, we got to take part in the Civil War, which you could argue was underdeveloped, but I thought was a pretty cool questline, and I think it worked. So, you know, in Elder Scrolls 6, I would like to be a part of a major event, not just a part of a lesser event. Now, don't get me wrong, the Civil War was awesome, and I think it was cool to be a part of that massive thing. And in Oblivion, you go against the Oblivion Gates, which I think, actually, was the big threat. It was the big thing. But I think since Skyrim, we seem to be, like, skipping a lot of major events, and I really don't like that. I mean, for example, one of the big selling points of Fallout 4 was you were there when the bombs were dropped. You had the pre-life, and I think that that was awesome. That is what I like to see. The major event is there in front of your eyes, and with Skyrim you miss that, and with Starfield you seem to also miss that too. That, of course, being the big war in Starfield between, I think it was the 3-star Rangers and the Mast people? What are they called? Oh, they're not called Mast. The United Colonies! Haha! Gotcha! What do you mean Starfield's a forgettable game? I would love to see some real location variety. They've always done this pretty well with Elder Scrolls, but with Fallout, I never felt they had this locked down, and it always really bugged me. In Fallout, for the most part, and I understand that it's because it's a post-apocalyptic game, you get basically the same areas. It's dilapidated, destroyed area. When you play Skyrim, there's just so many different areas and so many different themes for the map. For example, you got the snowy mountains, or you got the swampy areas, or you got the really green, bustling life areas, you got the big cities. They do it really well. They basically handcraft the level to feel different no matter where you are in the game. It never feels like you get too much of one thing. Had enough of the snow? Go to the center of the map. Missed the snow? Go back to the snow. One would say it just works, with 16 times the detail. Here's a hot take, since you all know I'm a bit of a Skyrim fanboy. I would love to see them return to a bit more of a hardcore RPG thing that it has going for it. The one thing I will give Bethesda with Starfield is there are elements there that I think are a lot more hardcore RPG than a game like Skyrim. Now, they're not inherently better or worse, they're just different. But I think to a certain degree there are elements from Starfield I would love to bring over to a game like Elder Scrolls 6. And the main thing is, I want them to basically nab anything that was a lot more RPG centric, a lot more RPG hardcore. Because, to be honest, I think it's pretty cool. And when you look at like Morrowind or Oblivion, you could argue they're more hardcore RPGs than Skyrim, which is true. And even though Skyrim is my favourite game, I can definitely see the flaws there by scaling it back and, you know, shrinking it just a little. But maybe this can be the game to stop that trend. I would love to see Elder Scrolls 6 really expand on the RPG elements, because they did make a big point of it with Starfield. They kept bringing up, oh yeah, they want this to feel more like an RPG than any other game. I'd also love to see them bring back the updates they had for Starfield. There was some really cool stuff there, the one thing being the Scalable Difficulty. Now, I'm just going to be real, okay? I'm the type of guy who picks a difficulty preset and sticks with it, okay? I'm not sitting there messing with the settings. Put me on normal, put me on hard, I'm happy. But I understand for a lot of people, the difficulty scaling was actually really good, and it let you balance the game the way you'd want it to be. I know a lot of people really turned up the difficulty for the alien life on planets to make exploring the planets a bit more fun. And I think that can completely work for Elder Scrolls 6, you know. Maybe having the bosses be the hardest enemies in the game, but your average enemy not being too bad, or vice versa. Maybe the bosses are too hard for you, and you want to specifically tone down the bosses because that's where you're struggling, but the average enemy is completely fine. I think that would work for a lot of people, and I think that that's something they should definitely think about bringing back. Speaking of bringing things back, I want to see them expand the quest lines for factions. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the Thieves Guild in Skyrim, I love the Dark Brotherhood in Skyrim, but there are quest lines in the factions that are really underdeveloped. Going back to the Civil War, it's really quite boring at times. It's go to fort, clear out fort, go back to Ulfric. That's basically what you do over and over until you eventually get the cool missions, like taking over Whiterun, or taking over Solitude, or taking over Windhelm. And I think regardless of whether you're an Imperial sympathizer or a true Nord, you deserve a good questline. So I definitely wanted to expand on it. I want the questlines to be more interesting in that department. I don't want so much rinse repeat. I don't mind there being grindy elements to an RPG, but I don't think it should be the quests. I think it should be, you know, you want to grind away at your stats, you want to grind away at your gear. You don't want to grind away killing a bunch of enemies at a fort because Bethesda didn't have time to make an interesting plotline. This also applies to the Mages College. It's not too bad. To be fair to it, I didn't think it was awful, but it definitely, again, just felt a little underbaked, and that we should have had a few more quests in it to really bulk it up and make it more fun. You can really do that quest line in, like, a couple hours, and that's not great, man, because you want to be sitting there, you know, engrossed in it and playing through it for a good amount of time. You don't want to be like, well, I've got an afternoon, I might as well get the mages over and done with, which is kind of how I feel when I play Skyrim. And I understand that I've been playing Skyrim for a very long time, so it's not quite as interesting. I don't take quite as long to look around as I once did. but I think bottom line is, no one should be able to blast through a quest line in a couple hours. Here's a big one for me. I want there to be more unique weapon designs. Now, I don't mind the weapon designs we have, to be completely honest, but my biggest issue is when you get a really cool weapon, and it's a repeat design with a different name. So, for example, you can have Dragonbane, which is, the one that killed the dragons faster. It's the best weapon for slaying dragons. It's one of the best katanas in the game. And then you can go and get Bola's Oathblade, which is the exact same weapon with a different enchantment. And that's really underwhelming. I'm just going to be real, okay? That's the most underwhelming thing. They don't feel unique. You don't have a sword that you're like, yes, that's my character's sword, and I love it. And they had some really cool weapon designs in Skyrim. I mean, look at Dawnbreaker. It's beautiful. More of that, okay? This is not a thing you're weak at, but it's a thing you need to pull through with a little more because you're on the tip of it, man. You've got great weapon designs. Don't have so many repeats. And I feel like this has only got worse for Bethesda, to be completely honest. I mean, when you play Starfield, those weapons feel so boring to me. And, as I say, I feel like I'm hating on Starfield a lot. I want to point out I like the game, okay? I've played it a lot. But the weapon design is boring. It really is. And before anyone says, I understand that one is a mythical RPG and the other one's trying to be grounded in realism. But when making a space game, I feel like they played it very safe with the weapons and they didn't have even a couple really cool ones for me. So I just hope Elder Scrolls 6 goes for the more crazier, cooler approach to its weapon design, opposed to safe options. You definitely need safe options, because that's how you balance the crazier ones, but don't go too overboard making it safe. I miss when they let us basically stab or shoot whoever we want in Bethesda games, and I understand that it breaks a lot of quests, but I think this is such an easy fix. They've expanded all the difficulty options so you can basically manually set what you want. At the very bottom of it, just put quest protection with a little tick box. If I turn quest protection off, I want there to be no essential NPCs. I don't care if you break my quest lines, I don't care if you break the game. If I can kill them, I can kill them. I feel like when developing an RPG, if there's an issue you're having, you need to focus on solving that issue by expanding, not by shrinking or removing. So for example, the killing the NPCs thing, that shouldn't have been solved by, well, we'll just make them essential. It should be like, okay, how can we expand the feature so everyone's happy? And it's like, okay, quest protection. That takes 2 seconds and I've fixed your problem. And I understand it's not perfect, but like, make it manually set on for most players unless you go digging for it. Like, I'm not saying it has to be turned off all the time and people can just ruin their game, but I do think that to a certain degree, having the option there for those who want it, I think that's nothing but beneficial for you guys. But as you'd imagine, killing major NPCs would have real impacts on the game, and that's something I want to come back with Elder Scrolls 6. I want weighty, big, large decisions. Decisions where it's like, oh my god, I don't know what to do here, but this might like cost the fate of the land I'm in. That was always something I found really cool about Elder Scrolls. Even Skyrim, as trimmed down as it can be at times, I think has some really cool decisions going for it, like whether you join the vampires or whether you become a werewolf, stuff like that. Even Skyrim, as trimmed down as it is, has some decisions like that that I think are really, really cool. For example, when you do play the Civil War line, I love that you can basically be like, okay, which city do I want destroyed? Is it Solitude? Is it Windhelm? What type of guards do I want in every city now? Because if I join the Stormcloaks, then there's going to be Stormcloaks everywhere, but if I join the Imperials, then there's going to be Imperial soldiers. What I'm saying is, those decisions are important to players like me. Players like me who want to sit there and go, I made the call, I've got to deal with the repercussions, because that's what makes RPGs so special. This video's getting too long, but there's a million other things I want to basically talk about, so we're going to do a bit of a speed round, okay? Graphics. Make it beautiful, man. Elder Scrolls needs to immerse me again. I want to be in the world feeling like it is a mystical land. I don't want it to look ugly, okay? No, I don't think it will, but I'm just saying, it's something I want. I want some better balancing in the game. I don't want people to be doing alchemy strats that level them up to 500 on day one. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't really care, because it is an RPG and it's single player. It's not like I'm competing with anyone. But it does kind of ruin my immersion when it's like, well, if I just sit here and I use the muffle spell over and over again, I can level up my character really quickly. Starfield really improved, in my opinion, in the glitches and bugs department. I can honestly say, I don't think I've had a single one for the most part with that game. And I want that to carry over to Elder Scrolls 6. The one thing I will give Bethesda is with Starfield, they really pulled through on making the game polished. Whether you like it or hate it, that's up to you, but I really didn't have that many bugs, so I'm pretty happy about that, and I want that to pull through. I want third person to be viable. That's another big thing. I don't really care for playing in third person in Elder Scrolls games, but it should be an option we can all choose. Maybe the only reason I don't care for it is because it's never been good enough that I can do it, and I have to download a bunch of mods to make third person even more bearable at times. I definitely want to see them bring back some of the more engine enhancements they had with Starfield. Now, Starfield, as I say, is a very flawed game, and I can't believe I'm about to compliment any animations, but stuff like the running animation looks so much more natural than a game like Skyrim or Fallout 4. So, all I'm saying is, bring that forward and keep expanding on it. It's going to need a lot of expanding, but keep going. Please don't put 1 million microtransactions in my game. I want you to expand the family systems you had. That was really cool. When the Half-Life DLC happened, and we were sitting here now, and we're like, oh man, we can go have families, we can go have, like, children. We can have pets. That's great. Keep going. Why stop there? In Fallout 4, I think it was slightly better with Sean and stuff, but since then, it seems to have been non-existent, so why? Keep going, man, because that's something that's perfect for an RPG. One thing, again, I'll give Starfield is that you can have parents. That's actually cool. To give our character a bit more background than, I spawned on a cart. No, I'm not saying you need to do that, but I think that it was a cool implementation to actually give us a family in-game, instead of like, we're just a lone survivor, we have no story to be told, we have to make our own story. And don't get me wrong, that was great for the last 5 Elder Scrolls games, and it'll be great for Elder Scrolls 6, I'm sure. But, something to think about, maybe debate having family in the game. It'd be cool to have some sort of land ownership properties where you can have passive income. Now, I'm taking this kind of from like a Fable game, where, maybe you can buy houses and rent them out and stuff. That was always really cool in Fable, and I'm just saying maybe you could nab that from that series. Alright, that's all for this video. I feel like we've been here for a while, so I'm sorry about the long one here. Thanks for watching. Thank you for the support on the last one as well, by the way, guys. It's on track to be like one of my most viewed videos, which is absolutely insane. I love you all so much. Elder Scrolls fans, you are forever generous with your time and your viewership. Thank you for everything. Have a fantastic new year. See you soon.